Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Okay, so, Cristal, this is a little weird for us because we're actually friends.
Yeah.
And so as a favor to her, she said, would you come interview me? And I was like, that's going to be weird because we could just like jump ahead to the book or to Cuba. But that's not where you normally start, right?
No.
Let's start with the softball. You ready?
Yes.
Where were you born?
I was born in Austin, Texas.
Did you grow up in Austin?
Yeah, I grew up in Austin. My dad's actually from Mexico, from Puebla, so that's 2 hours south of Mexico City. My mom's from Austin, but I spent all my summers in Mexico.
Okay. And what, did your dad, like, you have such an amazingly varied career we're going to get into, but like, what do you think you got from your dad and your mom? And it's really...
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, my dad grew up on the streets of Mexico. He really didn't have any money, didn't have any food. He'd always tell us stories about how he had holes in his shoes and he'd have to put cardboard in it to cover the holes because he couldn't afford new shoes. And he just always had a passion to get an education, to make something out of his life, so he saved up enough money. He was actually in the Olympics, so he was an Olympic wrestler for Mexico and also in the World Cup. So he saved up enough money, moved to the US, and went to school at UT, Austin, where he met my mom. But he kind of always really instilled in us that I would say the work ethic and the drive and the motivation, and just always really told us that we could do whatever we were passionate about. And so that really stuck with me.
And so, okay, so you ended up in the hard sciences.
Yes.
Okay, so how did you make the transition from daughter of a wrestler to scientist?
Well, my dad had 3 daughters, and he had always wanted boys, so we grew up changing the car tires, changing the oil, working on the car engine. He just always taught us to fix things or build things. My sister liked doll houses, so we actually built our own doll house. So I just grew up always liking to make things and build things. So when I got to school, I heard about engineering, because no one in my family was an engineer. And I was like, oh, mechanical engineering, you make things, you build things. And that just sounded really appealing to me. So I think even back in junior high, I was in the engineering club and the robotics club, which definitely was not cool for a girl in junior high.
Okay, just so you know, it's not cool for anybody. It's awesome, but not cool. So.
No, but like...
Were you the only girl in that whole...
Yeah. I was always the only girl, but I don't know, it didn't bother me because I grew up not seeing a difference between girls and guys. I thought I was one of the guys. We played soccer with the boys. We did all the stuff my dad did. So I never really thought that I couldn't do math or I couldn't do engineering or any of that.
And so, okay, so then what did you end up studying? Like, what did you get your degree in?
So my undergrad was in mechanical engineering and Plan 2, which is a liberal arts honors program at UT, so kind of like a Trinity education, very well-rounded.
Slightly less expensive?
Yes, much less expensive. Then I ended up getting my master's in biomedical engineering, my Ph.D. in biomedical, but it was specifically focusing on nanotechnology and drug delivery. Then I did a couple postdocs and other things.
Okay, so you went from normal engineering to squishy.
Yes.
Very tiny engineering. How did you get pulled into nano?
Yeah.
Nanotechnology sounds like something Star Trek talks about, and we still don't really have access to it.
Well, it's really interesting because, I started studying that back in 2003. And it's interesting because nanotechnology hasn't actually come into its own yet. It's still very nascent, it's very new. But for me personally, after mechanical engineering, I worked at 3M. I did product development engineering. I was making copper connectors for automated test equipment, very boring, so it's just things you plug into the wall, little copper plugs. And at the time, 9/11 happened, and I thought to myself, I don't see how what I'm doing is actually helping people. And at the time, Dolly the Sheep was happening, genetic engineering, and I'm like, wow, this is cool, like this is the future. And I started taking biology classes at night, chemistry classes, and at the time, 3M was doing layoffs, and I volunteered to be laid off. And
did they pay you for that privilege?
Yes, they did, actually.
Nice.
So we actually used to call 3M the retirement home. This was before the economy was bad, but we actually literally had 2-hour lunches. We had free time to innovate and do things we wanted to. They had dance classes after work and like ice cream socials.
So did you see that as like a low pressure environment, or do they really want innovation?
They wanted innovation, but I think I felt like it was kind of low pressure at the time. But I do remember, like, we did all sorts of cool stuff. Like, in one of the labs, they were actually generating lightning. So, because they do a lot of, the stuff on the roads, the little reflective stuff and the signs. So they want to see how that actually is affected when there's lightning storms and thunderstorms. So there was this huge lab where they actually created lightning. So it was always really cool to go and, like, see that stuff. And I mean, of course, 3M, like, Post-it notes were invented there. So it was fun.
Okay, so you get a small settlement, you leave the retirement home, you fend for yourself in the world. What do you do next?
Well, so I've been planning. So I was taking the classes at night. I told my friends and family.
You had a Ph.D.
Not yet, not yet.
Oh, you okay? I
This
was
is
like
prior.
Oh, okay,
prior.
good. I was like, man, you had a Ph.D. and you're like, I needed more.
No, but so when I left 3M, I was taking the classes at night, and I told my friends and family, I want to go do my Ph.D. in biomedical engineering. Like, I want to create something new. I want to solve a problem. And my goal for going back was actually I wanted to find a cure for cancer. And so that's part of the reason I went back. But all my friends and family,
Was that just because you thought of it as like a moonshot, or did you have a more personal reason for being interested in cancer?
I mean, some of my relatives had cancer, but just I think after 9/11, I really felt this desire to really solve a big problem in society. And it's probably because my dad told me I could do anything I wanted to, so I decided that was going to be my goal. I've always been kind of idealistic that way, and I tell people I'm going to do it, and I did it. So I don't know, it was really cool. It was something I was very passionate about.
Okay, so you go and get your degree in biomedical,
Yes.
and then how do you get to, you're thinking about cancer
Yes.
in a positive way. How do you get to nano from that?
So, the ways to treat cancer was using chemotherapy, and there really wasn't a good way to deliver the drugs to the specific tumor tissues without causing massive side effects. And so I knew that there were ways using nanotechnology to do that. And so I mixed kind of the concept of using a delivery device with something called step and flash imprint lithography. So if you think of making a nano, it's like a cookie cutter, like when you stamp something out. So this was actually just like a nano cookie cutter. So I worked in a clean room for 6 years with this huge equipment that took up this whole room to make stamp out tiny little nanoparticles. And within the nanoparticles, you actually, I would encapsulate a chemotherapeutic agent. And what you would do is you would inject it into the body, which I never did in humans, but with small mice. You would inject it into the mice. It would travel through the body and preferentially target a lung cancer tumor tissue. So when it sensed an overexpression of the cancerous enzyme, it would then release the drug, but it wouldn't touch any of the healthy cells.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. Okay, so far your trajectory is very driven, but also very academic.
Yes.
So where does NANOTaxi fit in?
So NANOTaxi was a company I founded in grad school. On a whim, I took a class on technology commercialization in the engineering department. And I think that's where I really learned that, research is great, technology is great, but until you actually apply it to a societal need, it's not really going to do anything. And so that's when I realized, hey, this thing that I invented could actually really work. I could turn it into a company. I could actually sell this. We really, even now, we still haven't found a way to, I'd say, efficiently target tumor cells without, causing all this harm to the body. So I took this class and I learned how to commercialize my research. So how to go about getting a patent, how to develop a business model, how to go out and market it, how to talk to investors.
It must have been a hell of a class.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, it changed my life, honestly.
Well, I was like, normally, like Kaufman has statistics that something like 60% of entrepreneurs have a direct family member or close person who started businesses, and that's where they get their inspiration. That doesn't sound like you followed that path.
Well, someone asked me that before, and I think, and this kind of goes to Venturelab, but my dad, when he came to the U.S., had actually started some summer camps, some soccer summer camps called the Amigo Summer Camp. And until recently, I didn't realize, I was like, no, I didn't have any entrepreneurs in my family, no one had started any businesses. And then I remember that my dad, growing up, had these summer camps that he started. So I must have had that somewhere in the back of my mind to even think that, hey, of course, I can commercialize this, or I can take this to the large drug companies. So I had been working with like the venture arm of Johnson & Johnson, doing investor pitches in New York, San Francisco. I don't know, it was pretty exciting. And in that class, and the professor in particular, he was really my mentor and really helped me see that I could accomplish that.
And do you still stay in contact with him?
Yeah, so I actually, during NANOTaxi and after, I worked with him on my postdoc, so in technology commercialization. So I started teaching other students and faculty how to commercialize their research, because like you said, a lot of scientists and engineers, all they think about is the theory or developing the technology, but they don't think how it can actually be applied to help people. So we were actually teaching them how to do that. So I ran something called the Idea to Product program for about 5 years with this professor.
Okay. And so what ended up happening in NANOTaxi?
So NANOTaxi, so I ended up getting into a group called Springboard, which is a national group for women CEOs with high growth companies. They were amazingly helpful, like looking for women leaders and mentors who were CEOs of tech companies. And they really helped me with the pitches, getting set up with VCs. And then I kind of got to that stage where I needed more funding, because I was at the stage where I was going to start doing clinical studies. And the investors wanted to see more studies, but I wasn't able to get the grants or raise the funds to do those. And at the time I was actually a single mom with 2 kids, and if you're trying to start a company and have a family, it's very difficult. So I wasn't able to convert any sort of investment, and ended up getting the opportunity to run the Entrepreneurship Center at Trinity. So I think things kind of actually just fell into place.
So, okay, so knowing you have a lot of experience now, like, was there any advice you would have given you back then, knowing what you know now about NANOTaxi? Where was that? I mean, it seems like you're happy that everything worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
But it's just a case where, because it still seems like nanotechnology is still not really a thing.
Well, and my patent's still out there, so if anyone wants to take it and try and take it to the drug companies. The thing is, with drug delivery and biotechnology, it is a long, hard, extremely risky, but the reward is very high road. I mean, I did the research, I was doing research for 8 years. And I mean, your patents don't even last that long. And then once you go through the research phase, even starting clinical trials is another round of 10 years. And you still don't even know for sure if the drug is going to work the way that you expect it to work in a human body. So it's just having kids and having a family, it made it much more difficult to want to try and pursue that. I think if at the time I didn't, and I was just a single grad student, I probably would have. But I think it is harder when you have a family.
Well, I mean, if you want to keep them.
Yeah. If you want to raise your kids.
Yeah. Okay, so then you transitioned to, you were in Austin at UT this whole time.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And then you came to San Antonio.
Yes.
Welcome to San Antonio.
Thank you.
Okay, so what did you do at Trinity?
So the idea was that they were trying to start an entrepreneurship center. And I think they had someone in before, and it didn't quite work out that well. I think, Trinity is a typical liberal arts university, and they really wanted to transition into entrepreneurship, but there was, some opposition from people that think that it should be, I'd say not, like entrepreneurship seems more like a trade. It's more something like that is not pure liberal arts. So I think it was kind of challenging, kind of pushing past that and trying to build relationships within Trinity, saying, hey, look, entrepreneurship, if you're an artist, you're going to need to know how to market your own art, or maybe you're going to want to own your own studio. If you're a doctor and you want to have your own practice, like in everything we do, you need those entrepreneurial skill sets. And so just trying to teach them that entrepreneurship isn't just tech, it's not necessarily just starting a company, you need it in everything you do. So I think the key was really in creating it was teaching people, teaching the university that, and then also building out the community in San Antonio. Like I guess the first people I met, were you and Pat and Rackspace and Graham, and everyone was like, I remember coming to San Antonio, I'm like, where do the entrepreneurs meet? And I think Pat told me it was like Chester's or some hamburger joint. Or
You gotta start somewhere.
Or Madeline, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I had come from Austin, and I'm like, oh, well, there's a bunch of co-working spaces, and I think
those eventually.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of interesting to be here before the co-working spaces, because I know the Molina Healthcare Building, it was Pair Analytics and a couple other companies that had started to kind of co-work together. And then I think you guys were doing all those investigations of different cities to see how co-working went. And then finally, like, Geekdom started. And I remember first going to Geekdom when there was like nothing, just like no walls, no chairs. And,
A dream of 25 members. It was a good time.
Yeah, so I mean, it was neat. It was just neat to see that ecosystem building, like building collaborations within the university, with students, with the community, and building up that kind of critical mass of entrepreneurs.
So what were you most proud of from your Trinity experience?
I mean, I think really creating the Entrepreneurship Center. I think one of the things that I brought, so when I was at UT, I helped create 3-day startups. So there were a bunch of students that were in my class, and they had an idea to try and start companies over a weekend. So I really helped them, mentor them. And then when I came to San Antonio, I was like, you know, this will be a really good way to build the community here. And so I ended up mixing university students with professionals in the community.
Ringers.
But no, I think that's the best way to learn. Like, if it's all students, you don't get that diversity of knowledge, of opinions, of experiences. And I think really building that bridge between the professionals and the students, you just learn so much more. And I think that's what really helped it kind of ignite the community, you know, kickstarting and jumpstarting Geekdom. So I'd say all of that I'm proud of.
Okay, and what did you struggle with in that?
So struggle definitely with trying to get collaboration. Like, I think when I came in, Trinity at the time wasn't collaborating with other universities. There was really just a lack of collaboration, even with the community. Because I remember coming in, I'm like, okay, well, who do we work with? What entrepreneurs do we work with? What companies do we talk to? And they're like, no, none. So just reaching out and building those relationships, because I think at the time, Trinity didn't have, it wasn't known for collaboration. And I think just really building that whole sense of, even with entrepreneurs in the co-working spaces, like, we all need to work together to create that critical mass, to really put San Antonio on the map and be known for entrepreneurial thinking.
Okay, and so after you did that experience, what do you think, like, this entrepreneurship programs now are kind of widespread in universities. It's a kind of a new trend.
Yeah.
What do you think they get right and wrong about that idea?
That's a good question. What did they get right and wrong? Well, I think really, definitely mentorship and collaboration with the community, they get right. So with Trinity, I think that's really going well. You really need the mentorship of the professionals with the students. I mean, it's the Kaufman stat. You know, most entrepreneurs become that way because they saw someone in their immediate family who was an entrepreneur. And I think if students are wanting to do that and they see people in the community, then that gives them the idea, oh, I can do that too. So I think having some sort of mentorship program is really critical. What they get wrong, I think some universities really focus on business plans, and I think...
Rice has a big program for that.
Yes.
I think they own the paper mill that prints them.
Yeah, I just, focusing on business plans I don't think is the right thing. I think it's really thinking through more so the business model, thinking about your team, thinking about execution, but not necessarily focusing on this plan that's complete BS and it's going to change.
I was going to say, I've still met some people who are very big fans of business plans.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't have any plan, but the business plan form itself is a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you should have a plan. You need to have goals, but really relying on this little dinky business plan that's not gonna, it's gonna change. It needs to be some sort of flexible working document. It needs to be done as a team, and it needs to be like execution-oriented goals.
Okay, so you had done kind of commercialization teaching, you did an entrepreneurship program, you helped with a 3-day startup. What happened next? So
I've been teaching at Trinity for about 3 years, and so one thing I always noticed at Trinity when I was doing investor pitches, even working as an engineer at 3M, is that usually I was one of the only females, and it was just really difficult sometimes. And I always thought to myself, how can I get more girls into entrepreneurship, into creating companies, being CEOs, being engineers, being technical. And I thought, while I was at Trinity, I was like, okay, I'm gonna solve this problem. I'm gonna get girls in my classes, I'm gonna get them into engineering, computer science. And it was really like pulling teeth. Like, they had already lost the confidence. And they would come up to me and say, oh, there's too many guys, I don't think I can do it. Or I remember one girl was gonna drop out of computer science because she got a C. And, I feel like there's a lot of guys out there who get C's and are like, okay, well, it's just a C, I can do it. But I feel like women have that complex where they have to feel like they're experts, otherwise they think they can't do it. So I saw that with a lot of girls, and I'm like, no, just because you got a C, like everyone gets a C in those computer science classes. They're hard. In engineering, you're not going to get A's all the time. They're hard classes. So I could not get the girls into my classes. And the ones that were in there, I thought was really interesting. One of the girls told me she was there because her dad was an entrepreneur and he said she had to take a class. So I started thinking.
Does that count as a victory?
No, that wasn't a victory, but I thought it was very interesting. So at the time I think my kids were 4 at the time, and I started teaching them these entrepreneurial concepts and they were picking it up. And so I realized, we actually need to start teaching kids even before kindergarten that they can do math, they can do technology, and that they can even create products and start companies. Because then for the girls, like even before they start school, if a teacher or someone says, oh, well, girls aren't good at math, or, oh, you can't do this, she could come up and say, hey, I already 3D printed and I've sold my products online and here's my website, so who are you to tell me I can't do math? So it was just really trying to empower girls at a young age that not to be afraid of technology or entrepreneurship.
And okay, and so then how did you take this? You had this interest, and what did you do with it?
So I was literally my last year of Trinity. So I had a couple of rock star students in my entrepreneurship program, and as they were graduating, I actually hired them on, and they've been working with me, since 2013, since they graduated. But I had been planning for that whole year to start this nonprofit called Venturelab. Initially, I called it STEAM, so it was an acronym for engineering, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. But it was also play on words, like it was playing on someone's or a girl's self-esteem. So I kind of planned out all my curriculum. I worked on, my kids were my guinea pigs, so I used them to see what concepts I could teach them. So even like Lean Canvas and business model and all that stuff, I figured out how to teach them. And then I developed the curriculum for different age groups and just started basically May 2013 was my last month in Trinity, and then I hit the ground running with summer camps for girls. I really didn't know what it was going to lead to, but I'm like, we need to start teaching girls entrepreneurship, and started at Geekdom, or no, where was the first one? Yeah, it was at Geekdom. Yeah, so my first summer camps were at Geekdom. They were all girl camps. It was just really amazing to see the girls come in, really not knowing what they were expecting, and the parents either, and to have them leave, like, creating these websites, creating products, 5-year-olds leaving with $50 each. And these are kids that usually would just be watching cartoons or playing out in the street, and here they are creating products, 3D printing, making websites, things that you would never expect a 5-year-old to do. So that was really exciting, and we also noticed that a lot of parents came in saying, hey, what about our boys?
I was going to say, you didn't keep the girl-only focus for long.
No, so girl-only, like girls, that's really my passion, is decreasing the gender gap. But what I noticed is, as I developed this for girls, but along the way, I was like, hey, all kids need to learn this, not just girls. Like, yes, I want to help the girls, but in order to cause this cultural change, we need to teach boys and girls that, everyone can do anything, not just boys or girls. So we ended up, at the end of the summer, we ended up creating 2 extra weeks of camps that were co-ed.
I think my son.
Yes, he did.
And so, okay, so you started summer camps. What did you learn from that process?
Summer camps are hard. I had never taught kids. I was used to teaching college kids.
And you called them kids. Like college students get called kids,
Yeah.
even though they're old enough to drink and drive.
Yes. So, I
Not in that order.
No, it was a lot of work. I came home exhausted every day, but I learned that this is something that could be replicated and that was really needed. And seeing the excitement of the parents, because basically at the end of the week we always have a pitch day where they have to present their products and their websites, and they sell them in a little marketplace. So it was really exciting to see the potential it had. And I'd say at the end of that summer, the parents had told teachers and administrators, and they started coming up to us saying, we need this in our schools. So I had never seen this turn or trajectory, but we ended up developing a whole, K through 12 curriculum of entrepreneurship classes for schools.
Okay, and so, and did you just have experience with developing a curriculum? I mean, what is a curriculum? Like, it comes up all the time. We have
Yeah.
a curriculum, you'll love our curriculum, but what is it?
So I'm trying to think. So I mean, at the university level, basically, I really miss teaching sometimes, but I miss working at the university because you have a lot of time. You teach your classes, but you have a lot of time to just be creative and think and develop, hypotheses and check out all the new technology that's going on. So during my first year at Trinity, what I was doing was developing these classes. I'm like, what's important for the kids to know? What do they need to know about creativity? What do they need to know about, starting a company? And so I basically took what I had taught at Trinity and modified it into starting with the summer camps, just week-long sessions of, I think there were full-day camps at the time, but just, 6 hours a day of, I'd say a lot of hands-on and interactive teaching kids how to do market research, how to brainstorm, how to ideate. I don't know, I guess describing curriculum is always hard. Like if you look at it, it looks like a binder full of words and documents and paper, but it's really a lot more. So now what we have to do is we actually have to train the teachers. Because we're in so many schools, I think we're in 30-something schools. We're in Texas, California, and almost Florida.
Yeah. New York.
And New York.
International Costa Rica. Shout out.
Maybe Cuba. But so now we're actually having to train teachers on how to teach this curriculum to the students. And so we basically have an online portal that the teachers log into. And they've got slides, they've got resources, they've got videos, they've got teacher notes, activities. So it's a whole bunch of that is developed into a semester-long curriculum.
And what has been the hardest part of this, of Venturelab so far for you? I mean, have you gotten opposition to trying to bring this stuff into schools, or?
So kind of like the drug delivery market, the education market is a very long and arduous nut to crack. I mean, it's not like cloud computing or this, that stuff's like, it's really quick. With school districts, it's trying to educate them that, hey, this is what kids need to know for the future. And they get that, but there's no money in the education system. The sales cycle is at least a year. The public schools need to apply for grants. So the teachers want it, the parents want it, the kids want it, but then the districts don't necessarily have the funding for it. And then also, I don't come from the K-12 space, so even learning the lingo of the K-12 school districts has been challenging. So we'll be presenting something to them, but it may not be in the format that they're used to seeing or that they want. So that's been a challenge, but I think also because we don't know about the industry, we've done some really innovative things that I don't think a lot of other ed tech companies have thought of. So it's kind of neat being the outsider coming into it.
And you had to build a team, right? You can't do this stuff by yourself.
Yes.
How's that gone?
Oh, great, actually. No, the biggest part of, I think, a successful company is the team and execution. And it's really important to make sure that you have the right team, a team that you can trust, that everyone is in a place where they feel a sense of ownership and they're passionate about what they're doing and they're in the right spot. So I think that's been, it's been a really good learning experience to try and see how we all fit together and work together, and just making sure it's the right culture fit too. If it's not someone that fits in your culture or doesn't fit within your values, you really have to, that's what you hire and fire for, is like the values, your company values, and so it's just making sure that you're true to those.
Well, and so part of building a team is understanding both what you're good at and what you're bad at, so
Yes.
where you meet people. So where do you think you're really strong, and what are you glad you added a team member because you're very good at This would be the team over here. Very excited to hear this answer.
Well, I guess for me personally, I'm more of a visionary. I don't like the details in the organization. So I like to go out and evangelize and get people excited and talk about the curriculum and imagine all the great things that can happen. And we all use the Strengths Finder, which is awesome. So it helps us figure out what our strengths are. And I'm an activator and an achiever, so it's like I want to get started and I want to finish also. But for me, I don't know, I'm not that organized and I'm not that detail oriented, and you need all of that. You need someone that's good at managing people. I'm still an engineer, so I'm not great with people all the time. Just really making sure that you have people that balance out what you don't have, like you said.
And you started it, but obviously as you bring in other people,
Yes.
you've had to give up some control.
That was hard, actually. Giving up control was, I think, one of the hardest things that I had to do, and learning to delegate, because as the founder, you want it, like you have that vision, you have that idea of what you want it to be, and you think that you're the best one to do it. But as you grow, you can't do everything. You can't be in different cities at the same time. So really, it's really trusting the team and knowing that they're great or better at what they do than you are. That is really helpful. I think, so I'm spending a lot more time in Austin, since this past summer, so I've really had to make sure that I have built a good rapport with the team, and we go back and forth between Austin and San Antonio a lot, so kind of learning that long distance relationship with the team has been very interesting, very challenging.
What keeps you up at night about Venturelab?
So for a long time, we've been going back and forth about, we are a nonprofit, but a lot of people say, hey, well, you're teaching entrepreneurship, you should be a for-profit. And, there's two sides to it. The whole mission and vision was that I want all kids to have this sort of education. For me personally, I loved when we worked with the Martinez Women's Center, when we worked with Seton Home, really seeing the change in the girls. Like they would come in hunched over, not looking you in the eye, not speaking, not having any hope for themselves. And when they left, they became the leaders of the room, and they realized that they could do these things. And so, one of the girls from Seton Home, Norma, ended up getting a full scholarship to college and became a keynote speaker at the Seton Home Gala, whereas before she never would have done that. And so really seeing the change from these girls and how much more confidence they have, wanting to go to college, wanting things for themselves, I think that's really important, and I think that's part of the nonprofit mission. On the curriculum side, I can actually see that becoming more of a for-profit later on down the road, because that's going to be very quick growing. We're going to need to hire a lot more people, and I think you can definitely hire people at more of a competitive rate. If you are a for-profit, you can provide a lot more compensation. So as a nonprofit right now, it's people that are passionate about what we're doing. So we've been having a lot of discussion about nonprofit, for-profit, and I think for now we've actually decided we're just going to go full-in nonprofit for now.
Okay. How did you know you were ready
Ready for what?
to do this? Like to push forward? It's in some ways kind of, there's a sort of through line of education, but you landed in a territory, you're completely an outsider, you don't have a language, many startups have gone to die in education.
Yes.
And slowly, it's not like on tech, it's fast. You go and then you blow up and you move on. You could waste 2 years and easy.
Well, so two things. I knew I was ready to start Venturelab because I was really pissed off. I was just tired. We need more girls, and I was pissed off. I'm like, we need to teach these girls that they can do it and give them confidence, and we need to start now. So that pissed me off. I'm like, no one's doing it, I need to do it. With curriculum, I don't know, I always tell people, kind of like how, I call it visioning. Like basketball players, when they're, before the game, they close their eyes and envision themselves putting the basket through the hoop.
Yes, in basketball, there is a hoop and a basketball.
You can tell I'm not a basketball person. But anyway, no, I can just, I see the need for it, and I can see it succeeding. I know we don't quite have the formula just yet, but I have a strong belief. I know our team has the capabilities. We have, I think, the best and only entrepreneurship curriculum out there right now for K through 12. So I think right now it's a matter of waiting a few more years until the education industry is ready for entrepreneurship. So kind of like coding, it took a while for coding to to get more mainstream in schools. Because people didn't, like everyone knows coding is important. I mean, it should be a foreign language, and now schools are using it as a foreign language. So it has a place in the schools. And I think, 3 years from now, there will be a place for entrepreneurship. So I just think we need to make sure that, we can be economically sustainable until the world is ready for entrepreneurship education.
So when you started, your whole focus was on getting more girls in,
Yes.
and eventually you brought in boys too.
Yes.
Do you give them different advice?
No, I mean, it's the same advice. I mean, it's the entrepreneurial mindset. I think it's just that girls aren't typically exposed to it or not nurtured as much in entrepreneurship or mentored as much. And I feel like it's girls that need more of that mentorship.
And that's another thing that comes up with you a lot. Like how do you judge what a good mentor is?
So for me, I think it's one, exposing the girls to these new things like technology or starting a company in a way that makes them feel very safe and comfortable. So it's the language you use. So even with our marketing material, we make sure that you see pictures of girls and you see girls of all different ages. It's not just boys. So there's a lot of messaging that goes on without even being aware of it that would say, hey, this is girl friendly or this is not girl friendly. So it's the messaging, it's having a really fun environment where it's safe to try and fail. So, schools teach you that there's right or wrong answers, or that, you failed, you get an F. And I think in Venturelab, it's a safe place for them to try something and fail. And I always tell people, I think failure it's the scientific method. It's, you're coming up with a hypothesis, you're testing it, and it either works or doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, you go back and try and figure out a different thing to try. So you're not penalized for it not working. You just try something else. And so I think that's one of the key things that we do at Venturelab is teaching them that it's okay to try and fail.
And so you've worked on the kids. What do you do about the parents?
So we've actually been talking a lot about getting parents more involved. I don't know, I think just so the pitch days at the end where the kids pitch all their products, I think that alone changes parents' minds. I still remember, actually Suizo from True Ability, his daughter went through the program 3 years ago, and he's like, you can't teach kids entrepreneurship. I'm like, yeah, you can. And he saw his daughter go up there and stand up in front of a crowd of 50 people presenting this idea that they had come up with and talking about how they did market research, how they made their website, how they created the products, how much they were selling it for. And the parents' minds are really blown. And I still remember we try and do a plain entrepreneurship, so girl startup, you startup, and then we also really like to teach kids about cutting edge technology. So what are they going to need to know in the future? So 3D printing, coding. We had a really fun hydroponics class, and it was really cool to watch the parents see their kids talking about hydroponics and how that whole hydroponic system worked. And the parents were like, wow, I didn't know you could teach kids that sort of thing. So I think the fun thing is just really showing parents that the kids can learn a lot more than you think they can. If you push them, they're going to rise to that level. So I think that actually, once the parents see the pitch day and see what the kids have accomplished, it completely changes their minds.
And okay, so you've hopped through a number of things after you put some real time into Venturelab.
Yes.
Well, how do you get up every day and still be as engaged?
I'm very passionate about it. I don't know, I love it. I mean, we're not there yet. We're not in all so when I first...
I was going to say, what's your top of the mountain?
Well, my big, hairy, audacious goal when I started was that, 5 years from when we started, that 75% of all graduating high school students would have taken a Venturelab class. And so that's still my goal. This needs to be, I want there to be policy saying that kids need to be learning this because, with globalization, automation, all of this stuff, I don't think our kids are prepared for the future. And I saw this at Trinity with my students graduating and not getting jobs. And there's actually a stat right now that I think it's 49 or 50% of all graduating college students are moving back in with their parents and lack full-time employment. And I think that's because we're not teaching them how to seek opportunities or create their own opportunities. So for me, I think it's a national imperative for our kids to teach them these skills. So I'm not going to stop until all the schools have them.
How do you, you said you tried to make it safe inside Venturelab to deal with failure. You're a very driven, successful person. How do you deal with failure?
So it's interesting, someone asked me that before. They're like, tell me about a time you failed. And I guess it's hard for me to answer that because I don't see anything I've done as failure necessarily. I see it as learning experiences. So I don't know. Ask me the question again?
No, I mean, that's okay. I mean, recasting it as learning experience is also very positive.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it as failure because each failure or learning experience takes you to the next thing or takes you closer to your goal. It's just you have to go about it in a different way.
And I guess now you look, it connects, the dots connect very straightforwardly now. But this has to be kind of surprising that you've landed in education you're trying to change the face of kind of elementary school education, right? Starting from nanotechnology, engineering. You're not building physical things.
No, but I mean, I've always loved teaching, and I think it's been a natural progression. Like I miss the nanotechnology, I miss the science, like I miss doing that. But the fact that I'm teaching the next generation these things, like I wish I could teach kids nanotechnology. That would be awesome.
I think I've seen that sci-fi movie. It doesn't end well.
No, but I mean like now that's my passion. I want kids to not be afraid of it and to be able to, I mean, we already have cars that drive themselves. I mean, just having kids think, and my son, he's like interested in going to Mars and colonizing Mars, and like I want the kids to be thinking about these things.
Okay, so there are a number of people out here who are probably starting stuff. They're going to ask questions, but I mean, do you have any advice for starting out?
Well, I'd say as long as you always follow your passion and work hard, it's always going to take you in the right direction. I also think surrounding yourself with the team that's really going to, kind of like you were saying, you can't do everything, you have certain strengths, but if you surround yourself with the team that basically has the strengths that you don't have, the team is really important. I always say that. And actually, one of the really good pieces of advice when I first got started is having a really great website. So one of the first things I did when it was just myself and one of my students is I spent a lot of money up front making a really nice, well-designed, well-thought-out website. And from that, people were coming in from all over, from different states, from Texas, and they didn't know that it was just two people. They thought it was this huge organization, like that had been established for many years.
I'm glad that still works.
Well, it gives you the credibility, like if you have, anyway, it did for me. So I thought that was a really good piece of advice.
You mentioned that you're kind of, you're not bi-coastal, you're between you're up the corridor, you're in Austin and San Antonio. And it's not quite bi-coastal. It's probably barely moving on 35. But I mean, what do you see as the difference between the two cities now that you've gotten to spend time in both?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, the cities are very different. I think San Antonio, I guess they always say, is the city on the rise, and I think it really is. I mean, I came here in 2010, and just seeing how rapidly it's changed and grown, like coming here when there were no co-working spaces, when entrepreneurs were all completely separate and no one was working together, to now having geekdom, and I think there's even more co-working spaces, and I think also having the city try and find itself. Like I think Tech Block is awesome. I think the focus on cybersecurity. I think it's really good that San Antonio is trying to really make its own name and not necessarily comparing itself to Austin, because Austin's a different thing. It's a different city.
Okay, so we're rounding up before we get to question and answers, but like two things. One, it sounds like you're working on one of the things that's on my bucket list. Are you working on a book?
Yes, I am.
What's it about?
So it's how we create, girl leaders and CEOs. So it's all my experiences from Venturelab and teaching entrepreneurship and mentoring. So I've been working on it for a year, and I just finished it, and I knew nothing about publishing books or writing books. I mean, I'd written a dissertation, which was really boring. It was 250 pages of like technical jargon. But I thought once I had written it that I was done, and I realized that once you write it, you're not actually done, because then you have to get your agent, you have an editor, you have to find a publisher, you have to negotiate with bookstores to get like space, like all those books you see in the front of bookstores. Usually the authors and some of the publishers pay to have it put there, like $3 to $5 a book. So negotiating with bookstores to like place for book placement. It's a whole long process, but I'm actually excited because I really want to teach. I mean, that's part of Venturelab. We're teaching these teachers how to teach kids, but I also want to teach parents how they can, build the confidence in their daughters and make them creative and confident and not afraid to fail.
Awesome. Okay, now you guys have to hold up your end of the bargain, which is you guys get to ask her questions. Anything you want. Well, within
Anything.
Meats.
How do we do this? Do they? We'll roll. Is that
Can we go to the bathroom?
good? Wow, that was not a good opener. Ruining the vibe. Somebody else has a question?
I can just ask it.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on incubators and what they can bring to a startup?
Oh, actually, I think I like incubators. So when I was at UT doing technology commercialization, we worked with an incubator. So it was really helpful, and I actually went through an incubator as well as a graduate student. And I mean, for the mentorship, for the advice, for the support, I think it's really great. I really like incubators.
I think the one thing I'd add to that is exactly what you hit, which is make sure you're getting all of those things out of your incubator.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
actually
What are the
getting real
biggest things that
mentorship.
you really want to
and-
look for when you're going and talking?
Oh, well, it depends. So, I mean, you need to make sure that the incubator is a fit for your type of company. I know there's a whole bunch of different incubators out there. So, like for me personally, I would look for an ed tech incubator, or talk to friends, or kind of like, the interview process. Like, make sure that you check it out beforehand. Like, talk to companies that have already gone through that incubator or the process and see what their thoughts are on it. But just making sure that that it's the right culture fit for you.
Yeah, I have a question. So when you were starting your own first business, how did you approach forming it, like LLC? Because that seems to be a big question, I think, with entrepreneurs. What do I do? Do I form an LLC, S Corp? That's a big hurdle, I think. And so what did you do when you started your first business?
So with NANOTaxi, at the time, I was a graduate student, so there were a lot of services through the business school. I also had a couple biotech advisors. And I think for the drug delivery company, it felt pretty obvious to become a C Corp. I think with Venturelab, we spoke to a lot of different attorneys to figure out, should we be for-profit, should we be non-profit? And I know there's a bunch of tax implications for each of them. So I think, that's a really great question. Just depending on the type of company that you want to do, talking with an attorney and figuring out if that's the right fit for you.
Okay. My question is, what if you want to be involved in tech, but you're not necessarily so good at like math per se, or but you want to start like a tech company, or you want to be able to use technology to make something new, but you don't have like the knowledge or maybe capability to make something amazing?
Yeah, I think just getting involved with the community, however it is, if it's volunteering or working in the marketing department, taking coding classes online, like code.org or Code Academy. I think that's like when I wanted to go into biomedical engineering, that's kind of what I did. I didn't have any experience in biology or chemistry, so I went and took classes at night. So just making sure that you're educating yourself on the industry, and then just kind of placing yourself in it. So you're picking up the jargon and you're learning how it works and what you need to do.
So my daughter went to the Girls Startup Camp last summer, and so afterwards she was very, very excited to, every time she made something, she wanted to sell it. But something I noticed is that I really wanted to cultivate that process from ideation, creation, and then actual execution, so she could feel empowered that after she left Venturelab in San Antonio, what she created, she could find a space to sell it. And we can make her a website and all of that. But I noticed it was difficult to find like farmers markets or whatever that would actually allow children to do that. And I heard a lot of, well, if we let one child do it, that means we have to let all of them,
Yeah.
which I was like, okay, like great, that's awesome. So do you have any next steps? Do you have any ideas or next steps for like community initiatives that involve Venturelab that allow these children to continue this process of empowerment even when they're not in the camp?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and that's something that I think we've also been trying to work on as well, because we did hit those same roadblocks, especially with the farmers markets. And they told us the exact
So
same thing.
exclusive.
But I mean, that's something that I think we all definitely need to work on, especially if we're going to encourage these kids to do this. We need to have some sort of marketplace for them. I know some of the girls that had made, physical products like bracelets or bow ties or headbands were using Etsy. So I think there are some marketplaces out there, but yeah, I think we really need to do some more work with the community or mentors that have the capability to help us let these kids sell their products.
And then we can speak to the effort of Venture Launch. So we have our competition coming up, Venture Launch.
Oh yeah,
for
I
kids.
got the email.
Yeah, and so not only do we encourage them to apply, but they will be getting mentorship throughout the year on a quarterly basis so that we can help them grow these products and kind of understand what obstacles they are going through. So this is our way to evaluate and kind of help with that and build the community so we can get more resources in. So with Venture Launch, that's our effort to really start to bring people back.
Yeah, and working on developing more partnerships with,
Right.
different businesses.
Yes.
I have a question.
Oh,
Okay, so hi. So I did this program with Junior Achievement when I was going to teach at a high school. And you get to pick a school, so it's K through 12. And I taught on how to be entrepreneurial. And so they give you a packet on how to teach. But then I really found that it was kind of hard to mix that dialogue with these students. So I hope you don't work for Junior Achievement, anyone, but I had to reword it, which is what they're really against. So do you guys work with Junior Achievement in any way?
We've talked with Junior Achievement in Austin, and I think there can be some really good partnership there. I have taught Junior Achievement classes as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about, but I do think there could be a really good partnership because I feel like I just think the curriculum that we have and the way it's developed is more understandable, it's more interactive, it's more fun for the students. So I think there probably is a partnership where where they could actually, purchase our curriculum and sell and use it in the schools.
I attended a high school that did the Junior Achievement like once a month thing, and it was absolutely horrible, and everyone hated it, and no one cared. So no one really learned anything.
Yeah.
So that's just
This ad places like Junior Achievement.
Well, no, like, people aren't going to be passionate if it's something dry and boring. Like, it has to be hands-on. It's like I tell people, like, entrepreneurship isn't like math. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. And even when we're training the teachers, we tell them, you don't know if there's going to be a market for the kids' product. You don't know the answer. So it's hard for teachers sometimes because they want to know that there's a yes or no answer, or there's a right or wrong. But until the kids actually go out and do the market research and do the hands-on, real entrepreneurship, they don't know. They have to go and talk to their customers. So I think as long as we make it engaging and the kids are actually, instead of sitting in a room reading or looking at a whiteboard, having them actually out there talking to people, creating things, that's really the way to engage them.
you got a good run there. No?
So what kind of changes are you trying to make in the school level to harness entrepreneurship for children? I remember in high school trying to sell candy and getting cracked down, like, once in my whole operation. It's unfair, right? Yeah.
Well, I'd say right now the schools are using us as gifted and talented programs, after-school programs. We are used in electives in a couple different schools. Are we used any other ways?
After school, 10-week programs.
Yeah, and then summer programs. So schools are trying to fit us in any way they can. I think during our pitch days at school, they're still actually not allowed to sell, you know, with real money, they're not allowed to sell their products. But I think once they're outside of school, then they can do that. But yeah, I think currently in the current school system, you're not really allowed to exchange money on campus.
Well, cash.
Credit card's okay though.
If I learned anything from Dove, it's Bitcoin.
Hi, I'm a doctoral student. My question is that your first startup, was it a part of your dissertation? And if it was, how did you balance that, your thesis and everything?
Oh, yeah. Yes, so it was part of my dissertation. So I had already worked in industry before I went to grad school, and I realized that my education was mine. I know my professor had other thoughts. He just wanted me in the lab 100% of the time, but I knew what I wanted to do, and I kind of just told him, I'm like, this is what my education is going to be. I'm passionate about starting this company. So I pretty much, I did all the work I needed to do. I made sure I got my research done. But in the evenings or whenever I had free time, I was always out, working on the business. On the weekends, I'd fly out to New York or California. My team and I would just make sure because they were also all in grad school as well, we would just make sure that we always made time almost every day to work on commercializing the technology.
Another question I have is that many ideas pop up in my mind. So you have so many ideas. How do you think that this one is better and I should consider it first?
Yeah, so I think with ideas, they're, like you said, they're not always opportunities. Sometimes there's just they're just ideas. So I think it's really taking that idea, making sure you do your research. Like look online, see what else is out there, seeing is there a need for this idea? And is it feasible? Do you have the resources to turn this idea into an actual opportunity? Are there people out there who can help you? So just making sure that that it's feasible, that you can find the resources, and then also talking to potential customers and finding out what their needs are, what their problems are associated with this idea. Because if you have an idea and you take it out to people and no one wants it or wants to pay for it, then maybe you have the wrong market or maybe it's the wrong idea. So just kind of, I'd say, taking all of that into account.
Thank you.
How do you sell Venturelab into the school? Is it top down, bottom up, and what's the pitch?
So I'd say it's a little bit of both. So usually, and Tracy could answer this much better, she's our sales guru. I'd say the teachers bring it into the schools, but they're not actually the decision makers or the check writers. I'd say a lot of times at the schools, it's the principals at the school level.
I think,
Go for it.
I think basically,
Teamwork.
yeah, exactly. Teamwork makes the dream work. So definitely have to get a foot in the door, whatever that means. If it is, a teacher's your advocate and loves you and gets you that meeting with a principal or an administrator of some sort, or a parent who can, get you in the door. Because, as Cristal mentioned, there's a lot of red tape when it comes to getting in the school system, but you work in where you can fit in, but definitely helps to have advocate who love what we do and get us in the school. So if your kid goes to school and you love us, just let us know.
This is why Tracy does sales.
Just wanted to add the farmer's market question by the lady over here earlier. I grew up in a family with 6 kids, and we always sold the farmer's market, cucumbers and pumpkins and all kind of stuff. And my parents never asked, like, is it okay that the kids can sell stuff? They just went there. It looks like the parents were the ones coming to sell. In fact, it was me, my siblings there.
Good idea.
It worked. Nobody asked anything or said anything negative. Like, I can imagine that they would have come to complain, if it wouldn't have worked out. If you can start to do that and it works out, it's fine. Nobody's going to complain. In fact, a lot of people like that there were some kids selling stuff too.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
We have some really stringent farmers market policies here. You have to buy a booth, like, and then prove that you're selling. And like, it's crazy. I mean, it's really, really difficult to get in. Like, I tried a lot of different ways to be sneaky.
Maybe we need a geekdom farmers market.
I was just thinking like a children's, like, where they have their own space where they can go sell.
There you go.
Yeah, through Venturelab,
Yeah.
like funneling those children into it.
Yeah, it's a good idea, great idea.
Yeah.
I know, but it sounds better on the recording.
Oh, so you mentioned earlier one of the statistics around kids coming out of college is obviously that 50% have a very hard time finding a job. So you I have a 19-year-old who's just graduated high school, and so he's at that decision point of I'm an entrepreneur, own my own company. So I've kind of told him, hey, where I would go these days is I wouldn't even necessarily worry about school. Go the entrepreneurial route because of what you're seeing in automation, globalization, the world is kind of flattening out. Start your own business and start there. You're obviously highly educated, so what sort of advice, because obviously you're passionate about education and so am I, but what sort of advice do you give to somebody coming out and say, if you're going to go into debt $100,000, I would rather you go into debt taking out loans to start your own business versus going into school and then coming back and living with me 4 years later and being honestly being right back at square one and trying to start something. So how do you kind of balance those two, and what sort of advice do you kind of give to kids coming out of high school?
Yeah, actually that's a really great topic, because I know people are very polarized. Some say, just school. Some people say, like you said, just start a company and take out money for that. Personally, I would say if you could do both. I mean, I think education is very important. The university experience to me, I think, is very important because you learn a lot more than just about what you're studying. You're learning about life, about becoming an adult, about being out on your own, which I think a lot of high school kids don't necessarily have that just yet. So I think, for me personally, the university experience, beyond just getting some really different education, like for me, I just remember taking classes on Shakespeare and philosophy and Mark Twain and just totally random classes, but I think by being exposed to these really different types of experiences, it really helped with making decisions and making judgments and kind of thinking outside the box, because I wasn't just focusing on engineering, I was looking at a whole bunch of other things. So for me, I think education and the university is still important for me personally, and at the same time, what I tell kids is, while you're in school, that's the best time to start a company. I mean, you may still have financial responsibility, but not as much as if you're an adult and you have kids and a family already. So, I mean, in an ideal world, I think kids should do both. But maybe I went to UT and at the time tuition was amazingly cheap. And I put myself through school, so I'd work engineering jobs in the summer, and then work on ideas and company stuff when I was in grad school. So I still found a way to put myself through school while studying. But I mean, it was a lot of work, but I thought it was worth it.
And then I guess it's just a follow-up on a separate, as a CEO, what do you find is kind of your biggest daily challenge, not having been in that role before, and you didn't have previous CEO experience?
Yes.
Something that I experienced too. What was kind of that biggest learning curve for you?
My biggest learning curve was, well, one, that you can't do it all. I was trying to, but not well. And also, although I've started 2 companies, I'm not necessarily a business person per se. Like, I don't stay up all night worrying about the financials. I'd rather just do what I'm passionate about. So making sure that I find the people that love doing that love caring about the financials or love managing people, because those aren't my skills. And so I think at first I was worried. I'm like, oh, I'm a CEO, but I don't like this stuff. I should like it. But a CEO can take many forms. And I think the form that I have found is being more the visionary, also like product development with the curriculum. I'm very particular about the curriculum. And then I've built the team in such a way that they are working on their strengths while I can work on mine, and we work together really well.
How much time do we have left? If you're really good, you'll be the last question. Otherwise.
Pressure, no pressure.
The pressure.
I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess my question was, going through school, I never really had any messages about entrepreneurship, and I found when I got out of grad school, it was actually this really kind of harsh reality, and I sort of wish I would have had some more of that. And so I was wondering how you pass on the values of innovation and self-sufficiency to these kids, like beyond some of the actual practical or tactical tools that they can use?
Well, I mean, I think it's really, I mean, so passing on the ideas of innovation and what was the other one?
Self-sufficiency.
Self-sufficiency. I mean, I think you really learn by doing. So that's the key, is they have to learn that by doing that, and we have to get them to do that. You can't, I don't think you can just tell someone, if you tell them it doesn't stick. So there's all these like studies with neuroscience that, you know, people learn in different ways, and things, memories and things that you learn stick in your brain in different ways, through drawing, through art, through music, through movement, through writing. And I'd say one thing that I think we do really well at Venturelab is we actually use all of those things to teach those concepts. So the kids will be up on the wall drawing pictures. So when we have them brainstorm, it's not just writing ideas with words, it's also drawing their pictures. It's creating their ideas with Legos and with clay. It's standing up and saying it out loud. So I think using all these multiple ways of teaching together really solidifies it in their brains.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I love Legos. I actually used to be a after-school Lego teacher for Bricks for Kids. Is this on? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. But it was hard for me because they had as a very high price for the kids to join this after-school program, and it kind of, you got a lot of the girls and the boys, but it left aside a lot of low-income children. So how do you target that and be able, since their parents can't pick them up or afford it?
Well, I mean, I think that's the benefit of us being the nonprofit, is that we want all kids to have access to this. So, you know, the kids that can't afford it, we provide scholarships to, and the parents that can't afford it will pay the full price. But we have a way to see which kids can and can't afford it, or what, you know, what the family can't afford.
How did you get it as an elective? I thought that was cool.
Oh, so that's, it's a private school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the private schools have a lot more flexibility, so the private schools actually will use it as an elective, which I wish all public schools would do that.
Okay, do you have any parting thoughts for us?
Follow your passion, because, you know, you may not be doing what you want now or making the money that you want now, but I think as long as you follow it and you kind of go with your gut, like you said, like I kind of veered through all these different ways and I didn't really know where I was going, but it's not being afraid to just try it and head that direction, and just being steadfast in heading in the way that you want to head towards.